Hi, it's Lisa, and in this video we'll talk about how to determine the tables and fields when analyzing data. First, some terminology. Make sure you know entity is another word for table, and attribute is another word for field. So one tip when determining tables and fields is to use abstraction. And here's what I mean. So here we have a couple of items, and let's focus on the one on the right. Car, truck, RV, and motorcycle. And think about if someone were to analyze some data and perhaps make a table that's a separate car table, and then a separate table for truck, separate table for RVs, and a separate table for motorcycles. Well, take those items, car, truck, RV, and motorcycle, and abstract up one level. In other words, what is the category above that? You might say, oh, those are all vehicles, right? And it might be that the better table is one table called vehicle, and each of those different categories, cars, trucks, RVs, and motorcycles, are all in one vehicle table. So another example on the left, we've got faculty, classified, and exempt. And these are all categories of employees at Bellevue College, or usually other colleges use the same kinds of terminology. So if I extract up from faculty, classified, and exempt, I get employee. And so it may be better to have one employee table and have all faculty, classified, and exempt staff be in that one table. Now, the exception would be subset tables, and we'll talk about subset or subtype tables towards the end of the quarter. So indeed, all faculty, classified, and exempt are really all employees, and cars, trucks, RVs, and motorcycles are all vehicles. Okay, here's another example. Cheerios, Corn Flakes, and Fruit Loops. This is specific U.S. Types of cereal. If you extract up, think what you'd get, and say on the right, Toyota Sienna, Toyota Camry, Toyota Prius, right? Think about how you'd abstract up and what the higher category would be. So for Cheerios, Corn Flakes, and Fruit Loops, they're all cereals, but if you even abstract up another level, you might say breakfast items, and if you abstract up even farther, you might say, oh, well, they're all store items. So for the Toyotas, you might say, well, they're all Toyotas, but if you go up one more level, you might say they're all cars, and I suppose if you go up one more level than that, you might say they're all vehicles, right? So you get the idea. So this is what will help you when you analyze data. And this is why I put together that table survey. Do you remember we took a look at the Safeway receipt and I had people list the first 5 tables that came to them? So here are some of the responses, not all the responses, but here are some of the typical responses that I would see. So starting with employee. So the employee was good, right? You figure to generate that Safeway receipt, you probably saw there was the cashier's name was there. I think the manager's name was also on that receipt. So indeed, you're probably going to have a table somewhere in their Safeway database that lists all the employees. A couple of people put down cashier, which is more specific. That's sort of a subset of employee. And that's actually okay. The more you note about database design, you'll learn about subset or subtype tables. And there may be a subset or subtype cashier table. But you may know that, and that may be why you put down cashier. But if you didn't know that, you know, be careful. That was maybe a little too specific. You might want to abstract up a level to employee. Now, some people also put things like grocery, frozen, you know, produce down. But those probably they came up with because if you look over here on the receipt, you see grocery, refrigerator, frozen, produce. You see those headings, right? And sometimes we're misled by that end report. And we think, oh, well, there should be a table for each one of those headings. But if you abstract up from grocery, frozen, produce, etc., if you abstract up, they're all items. So maybe all of these tables should be in one items table. So instead of having a separate table for grocery and a separate table for frozen and a separate table for produce, you really have one table called the item table. One way you determine that is if you look at, you've got 3 different tables and you say, wow, they all really have the same fields. They all have an ID, they all have a name, they all have a long description, etc. Then you say to yourself, wow, okay, you know, they all have the same fields. We really could put them all in one store items table. Couple of other things that I saw, people listed things like club card number, manager name. That's very specific, and that would really be more of a field, not a table, right? If you had a table of managers, you wouldn't just have manager name. You'd have other details, and you may not even have managers, right? You might abstract up a level and say, well, managers are really employees, so they belong on the employee table. But some of the things that people listed were very specific and really were going to be fields in the tables. So in summary, if you're having trouble, try using that abstraction method to abstract up a level and maybe see that higher table, and that will help you. All right, so here is a sample exercise that's similar to the one that we're doing for Project 1, which is due coming up. So this is a card donation site, and I have the link there, and you can try this out. And what it says is, think about what the database would be behind this form. Just like we did with the Safeway receipt, right? What would the database be behind this form? And really all I want you to be thinking about right now is the tables and the fields. Now you may know a little bit more about relational database theory, but I just want you to really identify the entities and the attributes, the tables and the fields. And so if you did that, if you navigate to that website right now and you did that, and you took a look at the card donation form, you might get something like this. Okay? You definitely notice that from the fields there's a donor table, there's clearly going to be a charity table, clearly there'll be a vehicle table, and if you've got those main entities, that's enough at this point. I don't expect people at this stage to know about junction tables and how to determine that, or even maybe type tables. So if you've got those core entities, great. I didn't put the complete list of all fields that I found on those websites just because it's hard to see in the screen here, but you do need to do that. When you look at the data that we provide, or that I provide, make sure you have all of the fields represented. That's the most important thing. So if you don't get, in these early projects, if you don't quite get all the entities or tables, that's okay. But you must account for every one of the fields that you see in the data. The other thing, too, that you'll see when I ask you to put together projects, I ask you to put 3 or more sample records. Now, I didn't finish this out, but you would want to do that, too. 3 sample records with data in each of these fields. Okay. So that's an idea of what you're going to do in Project 1, one of the assignments due upcoming. All right, so when we're trying to analyze the data, one thing we may do is look at a report like the Safeway receipt. We might look at forms like the card donation form. And the other thing we might do is look at interviews or conduct interviews. And so here's an interview, right? So it's just a bunch of text. The traveling clinic travels to schools and offers free health screenings, et cetera, et cetera. So what's helpful to do when you simply have a narrative is to underline all of the nouns, right? So nouns are, of course, person, place, or thing. Underline all of the nouns, and those nouns will either be a table or a field, or they might be irrelevant, they might be redundant. So let me show you what I mean. So here's that same interview, but I've underlined all the nouns. So we see traveling clinic, schools, health screenings, students. So for example, just starting with those first couple, I'll probably have a table for students. Okay, I probably will have a table that lists the different schools. Okay, now will I have a table called traveling clinic? No, that's the organization that does all of this, so I probably won't have a table just for that. But so that might be irrelevant, for example. Okay. You can see some of the other nouns. General practitioner. I'd have a table for all the general practitioners. Later on at the very end, I see traveling clinics specialists, right? So I might not have a separate table for the general practitioners and then another table for the traveling clinic specialists, but maybe one overall table for employees, right? Traveling clinic employees or traveling clinic staff. Okay, so there I've abstracted up a level. So you get the idea. When you have an interview or transcription that you're reading, the helpful tip is to underline all of these items, and any noun that you see, and each one is either a table or a field, or it might be a repeat, or something that's irrelevant, like traveling clinic's irrelevant. You'll see things like general practitioner, GP, that repeats several times, obviously, so and it also might be too specific, like general practitioner and traveling clinic specialist. If I abstract up a level, again, I might come up with staff. All right, so that's it for this video.